Welcome back. Today in this video, I want to talk about ramblers. More specifically, what I mean by ramblers is people that get on sales calls, usually closing calls, and they just ramble on and on and on and on. Those people where you're afraid to even ask them the next question because you know that as soon as you ask that question, they're going to turn it into a 10, 5, 15, 20-minute spiel and go on and on and on, bouncing all over the place. And I get a question quite often of how to deal with those people, because I do have videos where I talk about being comfortable with silence, giving people space to talk. But then what do you do when someone is just consistently run on? First thing I want you to know about ramblers is that they know they ramble. Most people that ramble a lot and frequently and get off track have been interrupted before, have people tell them that they're ramblers before. They understand that that's how they are, so they are more than used to being interrupted. So do we just let ramblers completely bulldoze the call and ramble on? No. We have to take back control of the call, and the way that I personally like to do that is not by interrupting to now change the subject, or interrupting to, go on my own monologue and talk myself, because that will come across as rude if someone's, talking a lot and you interrupt them and then you start talking a lot, almost just completely cutting off what they were saying just so that you can talk. That might turn some people off. What I found worked really well is guiding the ramble. So usually the way this works is you're on the sales call, you're asking a discovery question, you're saying, how long have you been in business for? And they start going on a rant. And if it gets too long, I'm going to jump in. And the way I'll jump in is something like, hey, love what you're saying. I'm really curious about this. And I'm going to point back to something else that allows me to probe deeper into whatever it is I'm probing on, whether it's probing into desire, probing into their problem, getting context, whatever I'm probing into. I'm going to use an interrupt like that where I'm saying, love what you're saying there. Could you tell me a little bit more about this? Or, oh, that makes so much sense. I'm super curious. You mentioned X earlier. So I'm going to let them keep going, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to let them keep rambling, but at each moment where necessary, I'm going to slightly tweak the direction of the ramble and guide it so that the call is still flowing in the way it needs to flow. If you guide the ramble, it's a lot easier to refocus them. And if you find that they're almost purposefully going off track, they're just going way off track. Let's say you're talking about business and they're way off track of business, or you're talking about fitness and they're nowhere near the realm of that. You can also just reframe and, let them know, hey, I want to respect your time. I want to make sure that we can get through everything we need to get through so that I can see if, we're a good fit to work with each other, if I'm able to help you. So I'd love to keep the topic focused on here and then ask your next question, right? So sometimes you will have to, kind of snap them out of it and reset the call again. You shouldn't have to do that more than once, maybe twice. But for the most part, if they're not rambling too much and they're just a little bit long-winded in their answering, then you can just kind of guide it by, jumping in to ask questions, right? People don't usually get upset when you jump in to ask them to keep talking. If you jump in to cut off their speech so that you can have speech, then obviously that's where people can get offended. But if you're just jumping in because you are showing such a curiosity in them that you want them to talk more, you want them to give you more, you just want it to be on a slightly different thing than what they're saying, they're usually okay to keep rambling on that next thing. They'll usually be like, blah, 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 and then they'll stop because you interrupted and said, hey, I'm really curious about this, and be like, oh yeah, sure, and then they'll just keep going on the thing that you kind of redirected them on. So if you deal with a lot of ramblers in your sales calls, not really sure how to handle them because your calls are taking way too long now, going over the time, give that a try. It's worked really, really well for me. If you've tried something else to deal with ramblers, if you have other opinions, feel free to comment down below. I'd love to hear some other strategies or things that you guys have used. Hopefully that helps. I'll see you tomorrow. See you in the next video.